Today on the Feel No Shame podcast, Rowan and I will speak to Dean Gaylard, a counsellor, hypnotist, Reiki master, and as you'll hear, just a nice guy. Dean was generous enough to speak to us about his own suicidal thoughts and feelings, especially whilst growing up, and the expectations, the shoulds that were placed upon him and probably placed upon us all, and the feeling when we can't quite live up to those expectations, or we just don't want to. We don't want to be the ideals that are placed upon us. There's that feeling of not belonging here, so why should I belong anywhere? Dean also talks to us about how the body can play a part in suicidal thoughts and feelings and any heavy emotional feelings, how there can be blockages of energy and the best ways to release these blockages. Keep an open mind whilst listening to this one and make sure you listen right to the end because there is a lovely summing up statement from Dean. I should mention here as well that Dean's views are his own and don't represent any of the organisations he may work for. Enjoy the podcast.
Hi Dean,
great.
Nice to welcome you on the podcast.
Hello, am I actually going now?
Yeah, it's live.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a perfect start. Thanks, guys.
Well,
So
just
hello.
listen to the
Just for a
last
disclaimer,
podcast as well.
just for a disclaimer though, whenever you laugh, Dean, it looks like there's an earthquake happening. So we'll try and keep it as best as we can, in a serious light.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Sorry.
You
I'll
know-
try not
It's
to
happening.
shake
It's
too
happening
much.
again.
You know when people wear those like body cams and you can just see their phone looking back at them and they're running and it's like that. It's a it's a bit like that.
Oh no, yeah. My clients have to deal with this on Zoom. Oh dear. I haven't got a platform, unfortunately, so I'll just try not to shake too much.
Hey,
if I laugh.
it's all for the views, See how many times we can get it done, Then it's happening now. But yeah, no, thank you. I think I cut you off as you were both mid-flow, but thanks for listening to the last episode. This is episode 5. Welcome. Your thoughts about the last few episodes, Dean? Go for it. Tell us what you think of us so far.
That that might be a little difficult because I'm afraid I have only listened to one.
Ooh.
So my thinking around that was I was going to listen to them all after I do this because I was a bit worried that I'd intimidate myself if the other guests were just like really articulate and had lots of beautiful, intelligent stuff to say. I didn't want to allow myself in it too much, so I thought I'll go in with a clear mind. But yeah, then I was really curious, so I thought I'd listen to what you had to say, Al.
Oh, brilliant! No, and it's an open platform. It's basically all down to Rowan, who I did say I can exploit for his good use of counselling if needed. But in all honesty, it's a pleasure having you on. And
Thank you. No, it's a real pleasure being here, and I think obviously the object of the show is awesome, and anything which is about reducing shame is top marks in my book. Right on.
if you can tell the viewers and the listeners a bit about yourself and why you're on the show, that'd be great.
Sure. So I'm a counsellor, hypnotherapist, and a Reiki master. I guess my sort of main line of work is really counselling, but I do some of the other stuff as part of my private practice. In terms of why I'm on the show, I guess kind of because Rowan invited me, and suicidal feelings, it's something that, I mean, I encounter it a lot with my work, with clients, obviously. It's also something which I've had a fair amount of personal experience around. In my teenage years, I had loads of suicidal kind of feelings and thoughts.
Yeah.
Through to my early 20s at points. My dad's tried to commit suicide as well when I was a little bit younger. Partners I've been with have been through kind of suicidal periods, so it's something which has kind of come back a lot throughout particularly my earlier life. So I guess naturally I have a real kind of empathy towards it, and I love to kind of support and help people. So I suppose it's something that's quite close to my heart.
Yeah.
So, Al, this is actually an intervention because you have 2 counsellors now. So this is all a ruse just to peel open your mind.
Whoa.
You're not peeling back anything, I'm afraid. No, leave me alone. Leave me alone. No, but
But-
it's a pleasure seeing you, Dean, for the first time. You can't see us though because of technical
No,
issues. But
no, this is very strange. I'm a little self-conscious, so apologies if I stammer a bit.
no, don't worry. You're in
But
good company.
that was a good intro. I don't know. I don't know the word to describe what it must be like for you to have had suicidal thoughts yourself, but also around you
Yeah,
for
yeah.
certain points of your life. And I know that when I was feeling suicidal at times, I came to you, Dean, as a friend, and you did a bit of Reiki on me, which I called Reiki because
Crikey, mate.
I didn't know
I'm
any
with
better.
Crikey.
Crikey,
Crikey,
Didn't
Crikey.
know any better at all. But yeah, that was an interesting day. Well, what I kind of wanted to ask you about was, and maybe this will come later on, but it was just about being open-minded. But because before I went through what I went through, I would have cocked a snook at Reiki,
Good phrase.
if that's a phrase, isn't it? And I would have been a bit skeptical about hypnosis, but then I also would have just been very I would have been narrow-minded in the sense that if I think hypnotism, I think of someone being a chicken on a stage, and it was only through further reading and hearing other people, and then just eventually going, why not? Just try these things out. So I was going to ask you about being open-minded, but maybe we'll double back a little bit first of all, because you also mentioned in the WhatsApp group that we set up before these episodes about the concept of identity and the shoulds and the expectations, and that was really intriguing. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that and how it relates to suicidal feelings, and we'll gently nudge and probe as we go.
Yeah, sure. So identity. I think, this is quite a big one for me because I always felt like a little bit of an alien, just kind of in society in general, in the school I went to, oftentimes in my family at points, because I felt like, I was kind of like, I didn't fit in entirely with the ethos perhaps that my mum and dad had around certain things, my sister as well. And yeah, I was a very, very sensitive as a child. I still am. And I guess this plays into some of the kind of energetic sensitivity in relation to the Reiki, which I could perhaps explain a bit if you felt like it. But there was definitely something around me not kind of feeling like I fit in with a lot of people around me. I felt kind of odd. And I know this is something which a lot of people I've worked with have kind of brought as well. This sense of being somewhat on the outside of these kind of accepted norms, be they belief systems or even things like popular music, just lots of the things that I suppose people form connections around, like group bonds. So I was kind of on the outskirts of a lot of that, and I think because of that, it made me feel isolated, and I didn't really have a lot of friends when I was younger. I had like one or two kind of close friends, but I suppose those feelings of isolation would inevitably lead into some kind of self-destructive thoughts, feelings of not being good enough. A lot of stuff which would make me kind of shame myself. Obviously it's the nature of your show. It's kind of pertinent, I suppose. There was definitely a lot of shame there for me. And again, this is something which I just hear a lot about with other people, with people I work with, that these feelings of being not part of the culture, not part of a group which they can connect with, can be very isolating, very lonely. And consequently these kinds of feelings of you being better off not being here, I guess, is kind of a natural evolution of that.
Goes back to tribal days of not being in a tribe, and I think there's probably the archaic part of the brain really fears being alone because we're not in a tribe, and then the tigers can pick us off a lot easier. But
You've said it
also,
before, though, Ro. You've said it before, haven't you? Where the caveman instinct of
yeah,
something that's new or different, and the caveman instinct is, well, let's go and kill that, or let's go and get rid of it. So yeah, I can definitely see that just playing over and over, and it gets recycled as it gets into modern society. But yeah, sorry, Ro,
I think it's probably linked to self-consciousness as well. And I find myself explaining this a lot to my clients in my work, that in so many words, you never meet a self-conscious baby. So self-conscious babies don't exist. They don't cry and then say, "Oh, does my cry sound a bit weird?
Narcissists, a lot
Does
of
my
them.
bum look big in this nappy?" Like they don't care because they haven't learned to be self-conscious. So we must all learn to be self-conscious, and we must all learn that there is an expectation upon us to be a certain way, or to like a certain thing, or to hang around with certain people. And that is all just learned. That's all programmed into us. And for you, Dean, you started to sense that you weren't you weren't what you were expected to be, and you weren't doing it right. And right is in quotation marks.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think this can fit into so many areas, be it kind of academia and school, because I feel like the schooling system can be a little bit one-sided. It's kind of, aggrandizes certain sets of talents and ideals, but maybe some others, such as, creative arts, I think can be a little bit undersold. Obviously, things where you're working with your hands, it's again, it seems like it's given kind of a lesser priority. So I think, again, it's like there's these ideals, there's these ways of being, or even things relating to appearance, which are deemed to be ideal, and which everyone kind of wants. But if you're outside of those, then again, you're somewhat alienated, even if it's only within your own thinking. But it's, populist ways of looking at stuff, I guess.
When was it for you then, Dean? When at what age did you just embrace the fact that you're different, or when was it for you that you just went, I don't care what you think, or has that actually happened, or that's the question.
Well, that's the I don't care what you think came a lot later for me as a product of lots and lots and lots of inner work and therapy, etc. Early on, I cared about what everyone thought, and it's still a challenge for me, in all honesty. Something like this can feel a little exposing for me because, generally speaking, I'm the person who listens, and such as you guys are doing, offer feedback and reflection, etc. But I'm not the center of attention so much, and this for me can be a little exposing because I'm sharing ideas and viewpoints which are very personal, and which to that younger self who was bullied in school and so on, I'm exposing myself to that risk of attack, of being persecuted, of being criticized. And so, sorry to deviate a bit, but to go back to your question.
It's perfect answer so far, so I like part one of the answer. It's very good.
Thank you. But yeah, to go back to your question, I guess it was probably the start of secondary school for me, maybe sort of halfway through year 7 or so. From then onwards, and I, unfortunately, my surname didn't do me any favors. So, Gaylard's, obviously the word gay now, there's loads of positives to it. Back then, it was like I didn't even know anybody who was gay in my school, probably because the school I went to in Bridgewater, they didn't take terribly kindly to anybody who was, again, anything but this kind of very standardized, accepted ideal.
Yeah.
And homosexuality probably wouldn't have entered it into that at all, I can imagine. So yeah, my surname was used against me a lot, coupled with the fact that I was bumped up a year from primary school. So my mum felt like I was kind of a bit ahead. I was doing lots of the same work repetitively. So she really wanted me to go up to secondary school a year early. Now, at the
Right.
time, I was far too young to kind of comprehend the implications of that. But when people started to find out in secondary school, they really didn't take kindly to it. So those two things both made me feel, again, very much an outsider.
I think.
Again, it's
Oh,
those.
sorry, Ro.
It's those, sorry, Al. It's those differences. It's that deviation from the norm. It is you are clever, you are sensitive. Your surname has the word gay in it. All of these things don't meet this strange ideal that seems to be created by somebody
Mm,
somewhere in secondary schools in particular, which
mm,
is impossible to reach anyway.
Yeah.
So I suppose people can get close to it, or maybe the loudest, the popular people, the most attractive people, maybe they're the ones that create it for whatever reason.
mm.
Maybe it is that barrier. Maybe it's if we are the thing, then nobody else can be the thing, and then we can pick on those people who aren't the thing, so that we're not picked on. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah. All of that.
everything that makes you unique and everything that makes you different and everything we celebrate as adults, ideally, is just another stick to beat you with as a kid. And then you're bound to start internalizing that. If 99 people out of 100 are telling you that you're wrong because you've been bumped up a year, it's really hard to be that one person and believe that one person when they say it's fine.
I'm sorry if you worry while I'm writing my way out of a dark hole, but it's better than a note left on my bedside table. Reach out to a friend, show them the version of themselves that you see. One day, I'll be swallowed by the dark, and I'm not afraid. I'm tired. Maybe I'll just lie down a little. Bones so brittle, unable to hold, futures deleted, just like that.
It's
Yeah.
fine to be like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're dead right. And again, this is something I encounter frequently with people I work with because, I could be that one person saying, reflecting back all these amazing qualities that I think they're bringing, but, I'm just one guy. And when the feedback elsewhere is so relentlessly negative and persecutory, yeah, just like you say, of course it's going to get internalized. It becomes a conditioned mindset that those external critics become inner critics that are tormenting your thinking.
I think from what you just said about when it really, uh, when you started embracing the fact that you were different, you were bucking the trend, so to speak. I actually think from my own personal experience, I didn't actually realize to just brush things off and just accept who I actually was until I was 18.
Mm,
Because a great example was actually on my 18th birthday, where I just well, prior to my 18th birthday, um, I used to bring in little pots of cheese and little pots of ham. I'd never bring in bread because I just didn't like eating bread, and that was just me being different. But I was called, oh, freak boy, and that was and I looking back at it now, on my 18th birthday, I embraced it because I go, yeah, I'm a freak. I don't care. I don't care what you think
mm,
because they put a big banner up saying "Happy Birthday, Freak Boy," but it was endearing to me. I
good to
I
hear.
felt I felt they put it to a point where these were friends of friends, if that makes sense, but they did it in an endearing way that I wasn't offended by, and they
Yeah.
discussed it with me afterwards to say, "Are you all right? Do you want us to take it down?" I went, "No, it's
Oh.
part and parcel of if that's how you remember me for cheese and ham, then fair play. But I know I'm bigger than that, and
Mm.
I'm much more attractive than you lot. So that's how I
Well,
felt. But I embraced it. I embraced it, and I think it's hats off to you that you were able to embrace it. Of course, it was horrendous, but the fact that you embraced your difference at an earlier age than 18, but you were still obviously going through the concerns that you were mentioning. But your music style though, what was
Mm.
it? I'm really intrigued to know what your music style, because you mentioned music, Dean.
Mm.
What was
Well,
it?
that's actually with what you said, embracing my identity. It to be honest, I didn't really start to do that until college, because
Yeah,
college is like, new levels of freedom, new sets of people. You've got a chance to redefine yourself.
of
And
course.
towards
Yeah,
the end of school, I mean, the bullying and everything like this, and I had a really bad time with my folks at home as a teenager. I had a lot of pent up rage.
yeah,
And of course, so I found punk to start with. I got really into bands like Green Day and The Offspring, and then I went from punk into metal. I was like,
yeah,
oh, okay, this is something that really kind of hits the nail on the head for me. It was so, so expressive of that raw anger. And
yeah,
for me, in my household and anywhere else, anger was just an absolute like no. You just you couldn't go there. Yeah, lots of bad consequences for that. And in school, of course, if I was to demonstrate anger in response to bullies, then I was terrified that I'd just have the crap beaten out of me. So yeah, with heavy metal, I started to play guitar. I started to join bands, and that became like a massive outlet for me. And I tied a lot of my identity, a lot of my sense of self around, the kind of the goth kids, the being those who are proud to be an outsider.
mm,
But it was funny because obviously being very sensitive, empathically, energetically to people's feelings and all this kind of stuff, I always felt like this is kind of morbid. Like I had this darkness about me because I was so hurt and carried these traumas in certain areas. But there was something about me that didn't quite fit in with them either. I was too. I guess I had too much of an optimistic outlook, or I cared too much about kind of just wanting to support people and be that guy, instead of just talking about death and and people being decapitated, or whatever.
well, I'll get rid of the next question because it was purely about decapitation. But
mm,
uh, Al, I apologise for cutting you off earlier as well, like a policeman at a peaceful vigil. Um,
Oh.
Dean, I suppose you can lean into the lean into the teasing, lean into the bullying, a bit like Al did with the banner. You can lean into it, and I say that like it's the easiest thing in the world, but you can lean into it and take it back and reclaim it. So that
Mm.
Freak Boy for Al just becomes his statement about himself, as opposed to someone else's teasing. But then for you, it's really difficult to lean into such an extent that you're leaning fully into the darkness. You don't want to fully embrace the darkness. You can kind of you can flirt with your own trauma, and you can identify with your own low mood and your own low thoughts, but you didn't want to fully embrace that dark side, which then
yeah,
ostracized you from the people that brought you into their fold, but were too dark,
Mm.
if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, you're pretty much there. Yeah, I dare say they didn't ostracize me, but it was again more me just recognizing that the resonating factor wasn't 100%.
yeah, and you mentioned holding on to it in your body, and that's from my limited understanding of Reiki. Um, it's about the body holding on to feelings. It's about certain areas storing certain energies. Is that right? So for
Yeah,
you,
yeah, yeah.
that darkness and that pent up rage from home, and as a little sidebar, the stifling of certain feelings. So you
Mm.
go home and you're not allowed to feel certain things. Where
Mm.
does it all go? Where does it stay?
Oh, that's a biggie.
where's your outlet type thing? Where's your ventage? That's pretty
So
much.
yeah, I mean, it's sort of it's a bit of a double-barreled question. So just super quickly, the vintage came again probably through the music. I found band rehearsals. I didn't become a vocalist till much later on, but I still was able to have a bit of a scream here and there, just like rock out. When I started going to gigs, get into mosh pits, throw myself into people, all of that beautiful outlet, really healthy for me personally, perhaps not for everyone. So in terms of the stuff that's stored in the body, so when I became, it was a partner at the time when I was about 18. She taught me how to become sensitive to kind of the subtle movements and flows of feelings and energy within my body, and consequently within other people. I started to recognize that I was also perceiving in atmospheres, energies of places, all this kind of weird stuff. When I started to become aware of stuff in my own body, the more observant I became of it, the more I realized it was a bit of an endless rabbit hole of stuff that I needed to kind of work on, which became a very, very long journey for me, well over a decade of kind of inner work. And it's the anger, the pain, the traumas, the resentments, the sorry, all of this stuff. It's almost like it layers itself up over time, over the years, and it kind of coagulates energetically, where you get these very dense, heavy pockets, heavy feelings within the body, and to begin working with them can be really tough, because it's like trying to, I can't think of a suitable analogy, but it's like, a massive rock within you, and you've just got this tiny little pickaxe, and you're just trying to begin working away at it. And sometimes in this kind of inner energetic work, which it doesn't have to just be about Reiki. I think bodily mindfulness is just a great way to get in touch with feelings and learn how to build resilience about kind of feeling the feelings and holding them. And that in itself, it seems to kind of connect to this, your brainstem, your reptilian brain, which is kind of in charge of that sensory input. And I think it just starts to dissolve of its own accord.
And do people ever come to you and say, I've got this thing inside me, I just want to get it out? And I don't know, I suppose again in my work, and I get the sense that these blockages, these coagulations, they're not nefarious at all. They're not there to cause harm. They're not there to be evil.
No.
They're there to tell you something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wouldn't say they're there for any purpose necessarily. That it's just a byproduct of feelings getting repressed, held in, and stored. And I think everyone does that to some extent, because otherwise we'd all be as free as children, as young children. You see a young child and how expressive they are, how unself-conscious, obviously prior to any indoctrination from the outer world. But, I think we all carry this to some degree, and it's just a case of how aware we are of it, or how in touch we are of those things.
I don't know how you both feel about what I might say next, but nothing offensive, don't worry. It's all about defrag. It's all about defragging, and what Rowan mentioned about the narcissistic baby of I'm going to do everything and I don't care, and then I'm going to forget about it, and the parents obviously do, or the adults that look after that baby do. But we all need a defrag, don't we? We all need to compile the thoughts.
Yeah.
And they do need to go into our mindset, and they do need to be stored. And then the rest of the unused files that we see on our phones or in our in digital devices, they can be deleted. But unfortunately, the human condition's a lot more experience. Well, there's a lot more defragging needed doing across a lengthier period of time. But I think.
Yeah.
I think it's just that imagery of being finding that inner child and telling them to release. But then it goes back to pace, ACEs and paces and so on and so forth, the adverse childhood experiences. But just going back to your vintage, going back, Dean. So you're 18, you're in the mosh pit, you're finding that outlet, that vintage. Was there a pathway that you thought, okay, I need to go down this path for helping others? What was the point for you, where you thought, okay, this is not looking off into the distance and saying this is my calling, but just saying I need to help people. When was that career path for you?
I got into support work. I was supporting people with learning disabilities for about the age of 22, for like 7 years across different services. And that came, previously I've worked in a nursery with children as well. This was all born of the same desire. And I don't know quite when it kicked in for me, but I think it's always been something that I took naturally to. I always wanted to be able to talk to friends. I wanted to listen to them. And people would tend to just gravitate towards me for that purpose. Yeah, and then I guess I was just looking for careers which would give me some opportunity to support people. So it happened fairly organically, really. But I suppose there was a certain point later on where I felt like, again, some of this inner energetic work I was doing, I wanted a qualification to sort of give me some credentials around that, which is when I started to study Reiki, and then hypnotherapy and counselling came again as another sort of stepping stone from there.
Mm. Another question from me, and then I'll let Ro bat it out of the park again. But Reiki, for me, I don't know a lot about it. There will be listeners or viewers that also are probably in that ballpark as well. Is Reiki, does that come hand in hand with spiritualism, or is it a completely different outset? What are the differences, or what are the similarities? Because when I hear Reiki, it's about getting in touch with yourself. It's getting in touch with your inner self, and that echoes something similar to spiritualism in my head. I could be completely wrong, but I just want to know more about it. What is Reiki?
Yeah, I mean, it's inevitably going to get tied up with spirituality because the philosophy behind it, the mindset behind it is based around non-physical, non-measurable phenomena.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's I'm not sure how much science can look into this kind of thing, to be honest. So it's a really tricky area. The essence of it, okay, so I don't want to I don't want to give any bad impression of my Reiki trainers, so I'm just going to talk about my kind of perspective around it, because obviously Reiki is an Eastern way of working, philosophy, healing art, and I think because I was already kind of practicing energy work, I had my own kind of thoughts, philosophy around it, so I'll just kind of talk from there.
Yeah.
So to me, it's just about the energy which everything is comprised of, and so it interpenetrates everything and it is everything. So there's different qualities or different sort of vibrational frequencies of that energy, which can obviously vary massively, which is, from the most dense, heavy feelings of depression or anxiety to the most joyful feelings. So the idea being it's all the same, it's all of the same energy or even consciousness potentially, but yeah, of very different vibration and thus feeling. So in terms of how I work with it, it's when as I say, when I walk into a room or when I'm talking to somebody, if I allow myself to be open, which is kind of most of the time, to be honest, I start to perceive things in the other person. So I feel feelings within their body as if they are my own feelings, and I can locate specific areas of the body where things are going on for that person. And I like to, in my private practice, I kind of like to bring that in if the person's open to it, to the counselling work, because it enables us to kind of hone in on something in the room quite deeply, which perhaps they weren't 100% aware of, or maybe they were very much aware of it, but having that kind of reflection, again, is another kind of means into entering into it more deeply. Now, when I feel one of these sensations, for example, if it feels like a blockage or something quite heavy, quite unpleasant, then this is where it gets kind of tricky to explain. I kind of open myself up to allowing that feeling to begin to unravel itself, as if it's through me, because I recognize that it's reflected in the other person as I'm doing this. Oh, something which is quite weird about what I do personally is when I started to practice this, when at certain points when somebody drops into quite a deep place and I feel them open to what I have to offer, the room will go bright kind of violet, which is where if the skeptics had stuck around until this point, they're probably going to ditch me right now, because I appreciate this all sounds kind of wacky, but this is my experience, and I see this color violet, and I feel the intensity of feeling and energy it carries, as clearly as I feel the chair I'm sitting on right now, but in some ways more so, because it's such there's such a potency to that sensation.
I think really quickly, Rowan, I know you've got something to mention to Dean, but all leadership programs now that I've been working in council, I've worked with various partner agencies. They really hone in on colours and energy, and I applaud it, because it doesn't box you in to say you're a yellow, you're vibrant and open. Oh, you're a nice blue, you're thinking and green. I think we're all on this on that spectrum of colour, but I think what you've said actually resonates with leadership programs and how to be a good supervisor, how to be a good leader, how to understand other people. So it's definitely there, and I'm definitely not a skeptic at all. I thoroughly do believe in colours and energy, but I'm not part of the spiritualist church. But I do believe
Me neither.
I do believe that we all give off various different lights, energies, and so on. And your depiction there just completely reminded me of a training session I did a couple of months ago, where I'm in a room and everyone's a different color, and you can tell, you can literally tell, and it's very interesting.
Fabulous.
So
Yeah.
spot
Well,
on. Sorry, Ro.
amazing. It's
The
really cool.
frustrating thing about that from an anti-establishment point of view is
Yeah.
that suddenly this beautiful thing about auras and colors in the room will then be co-opted by management and
Yeah.
by corporate. I don't know. We don't really swear on here, but yeah, corporate, and then put in whatever words you want afterwards. But I think this is what I meant about being open-minded at the start. So not that you have to be desperate to try these things at all, but if you are finding yourself in a really bad way, then why not? You
Yeah.
have nothing to lose. You have
Exactly.
literally nothing to lose to go to somebody who has what seems to be like a higher level of empathy that probably can't be taught. You're just born with it. And just that ability to feel those feelings and to completely step into the other person's shoes and to see these colors and to have all these visuals going on as well. Why not is what I say. And I was going to ask you, and bear with me on this question, because it's either a really easy simple answer or a more complex one, but I was wondering what happens, and I suppose you could talk about this from your point of view or on the other end talking with a client. What happens to a person's energy when they're feeling suicidal? Is it that the energy
That's a
disturbance
brilliant question.
causes
That is
them
a
to be
fantastic
suicidal,
question. Yeah.
or is it the suicidal feelings that change the energy? Is there a bit of a cyclical nature to it?
Oh, chicken or egg, eh?
Listen to him trying to
Chicken.
put lovely words in as well. Yeah, all right, yeah. All right. Good question, and he's got a bigger brain. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
I've forgotten the question. No, I think I'm good.
Oh, don't make me say it again.
No, say it again. Go on, use that word. No,
No, I think it is a great question. Cheers, Rowan. And it's a tricky one, because I don't think, obviously, there's not going to be one underlying feeling for all suicidal feelings. So the quality of the energy and the type of emotional charge that you have with it is going to be different for everyone. But from what I have felt, there's there's definitely some similarities. Areas that often get really highlighted for me, the heart. It can just feel so shut down for people who are in that place, so heavy, so, it's not just with anxiety, you get that sense, just as if you feel it yourself, that sense of like lifting off around the heart, like intensity, fluttery, buzzy, like all of this wild sensations. With depression, it's like a weight, like a massive rock over your heart, often just complete like block, complete shutdown. And I think often suicidal feelings can come from that sort of a place where there's just a sense of despair or helplessness, where, again, energetically, there's no movement, but emotionally, it feels like you're stuck. It feels like there's nowhere to go from here. And so this can be mirrored by a very heavy, if you're thinking of kind of chakras, it's another belief system, whatever, but it's called like the third eye chakra up here. But essentially around the forehead is inevitably very heavy feeling as well. I pick that up off people a lot when these kind of feelings are present, because when you get caught in these thought loops, these invasive, corrosive thoughts, constantly recycling around in your mind, you can get very head-centered, very dissociated and detached from your body. So there's a lot of energetic focus around here, but it's like again like a big dark cloud often. And the third one, I mean, I could probably go through the whole body, but the third big one for me is the solar plexus around the stomach, because this area is very frequently associated with your sense of self, your identity. Which again, of course, if you're in a place where you're suicidal, it's entirely likely that your sense of self is going to be a bit short, that you're not going to think a great deal of yourself. There's likely to be a lot of really toxic shame there. And so, yeah, very sadly, it can feel, the solar plexus, instead of feeling shut down, often feels very tight to me, for people, where it's just, there's this holding, there's this incredible tension. And of course, knock-on effects around digestion, all of that sort of thing is an inevitability.
And I think I remember you saying that childhood trauma is held in the stomach. Is that right?
Again, there's a real risk of overgeneralizing. Often I find childhood stuff is in the lower belly, so around around kind of your lower intestine, because again, we're talking chakras, and I appreciate this is going to throw people off because it's a whole spirituality thing, but developmentally, it's like this is the sacral chakra, which is in that area, is an earlier sort of developmental stage. So, like we develop our sense of self, egoic sense of self at a certain age. Similarly, this chakra, and all the things that are associated with that. So it's creativity is a real big one that's linked to that. Also sexuality, that becomes a big part of it. But I do find for a lot of people, myself included, childhood stuff tends to be held in the lower belly. But yeah, naturally, because they're next to one another, it influences the solar plexus, and the whole identity stuff comes into that as well.
I wonder why I wonder if, that's the word I'm looking for, I wonder if when you go for that real deep sob, I think we're all comfortable criers, the three of us. We're all right with crying if we need to / want to. But those real deep sobs, they come from the stomach. And the deep breaths that you take to sort of calm yourself down, you need to go for those belly breaths as well. So it feels like a really key area.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the heart, the heart is such a big one for me, especially because it's the place where we both give and receive love. Excuse me. And if we're not able to receive love because we're so threatened by, whatever implications might come with the reception of love, obviously for people who have undergone trauma, and where there's conditions around love and what that means, that lots of things to take into consideration. So I was about to tangent there.
Well, we've probably got a few minutes left, but I was going to ask you about and don't answer this if you don't want to, but you've mentioned shaking to me before.
Yeah.
Shaking it out. What does that mean?
Yeah. Shaking it out. Whoa. So I don't know if you know, I'm sure you do, Rowan. Peter Levine, he's done some incredible work, which is quite well known now, around how animals respond to how in the wild they don't tend to get traumatized. So he found that after an animal's gone through their freeze response or flight, whatever it might be, that as their nervous system processes the terror around that, they shake involuntarily. They twitch, they have muscle spasms, all kinds of stuff like that. So I before I'd even discovered anything about Peter Levine, I found myself doing this when I was doing all the Reiki, doing all the self-healing, seeing therapists, etc. When I'd get in really deep to something truly nasty, I would cry my eyes out for hours at a time, and I would shake like mad. My whole body would convulse, sometimes jerk violently, like where at a point I'd be like thumping myself. And I didn't know anything about this, and I thought I was a bit bonkers, to be honest. I think I freaked out one of my girlfriends. um, but so I later came to obviously read about this, and there's a whole methodology around it. Unfortunately, I can't remember the name of it offhand, but shaking seems to be an incredible way to allow the nervous system to release the energy that is stored when you have a freeze response, or when essentially a fight or flight energy has got trapped in the body and hasn't been able to be released at the time that trauma took place. And so, then we end up with years of this just anxiety and all these kinds of things going on. But shaking, I believe, is a really incredibly powerful way if you can tune into your body and relax enough to the point where you can let these things happen spontaneously. But sorry, just to quickly finish that off, just a word of caution around this. As with any kind of processing, if somebody sort of thinks it's a good idea, I would highly advise having a therapist, a somatic therapist, especially for this kind of work. And to bear in mind that when you're shaking stuff out, when you're revisiting these kinds of wounds, that it can, of course, bring a lot of emotion to the surface, and that can be devastating. So really worth having professionals at hand.
Trauma release exercises and emotional freedom techniques, so tapping, they're recommended. But again, seek a professional. If not for sessions, for training, you can train yourself in TRE, but get it from a professional, not just off YouTube.
And who would have thought that Taylor Swift would have been so methodological in just shaking it off, if that makes sense.
There we go. She knows everything. She knows the answers to everything.
I don't know Taylor Swift, I'm afraid. That's gone right over my head.
Al, can you kick Dean out of the meeting, please?
Yeah.
Can we erase this episode? Yeah. Well, just to finish off, Al's got his favourite question to ask after this.
Yes.
But before that, I did think that here we are, 3 people who identify as males, and the topic of this podcast is shoulds, and how can we miss out on talking about the expectations based on boys and young men and men with regards to the concept of masculinity.
Quite topical as well.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah, and we must be careful not to make it all about us, because it's not our turn. But we can talk about it detached from that issue, I think, just because I know that Dean winced when I said masculinity, and I think that's my standard response too. Although the supervisor I work with now in my counselling work, so this is a professional I go and speak to every so often, just about my work, make sure I'm doing it right. I remember once going to her, and this wasn't about any clients that I was working with, but this was about people that my clients had been talking about. I went to her and said, I just hate all men. And she helped me by the end of the session realize that I didn't. I hated the concept of masculinity that had been fed to me through not so much family or friends at all, really, but society in general. It's that that concept that I don't like. And then she helped me realize that I am no less of a man because I don't match that concept, because I'm forging my own concept of masculinity. And I think probably for you guys, it's the same as well.
100%.
Love it. Damn
Yeah.
straight.
I think
But
I think the analogy of, oh, well, you know, because I do the cleaning, I do the dishes when I can, I look after my son. Yet, you know, 20, 30 years ago, that's not a man's job. You know, you should be fishing, or you should be down the mine. You know, that sort of
just
ideology. But
punching somebody
just
for
punching
ages.
punching a pheasant or something, you know, just for Sunday sport. But yeah, I think rightly said though, Rose,
Right.
it's finding your own masculinity. It's finding your own version of you, whether you have male genitalia or female genitalia, or you know, just any form of anatomy. You know, we are people at the end of the day. That's how I see it. But
Beautiful.
yeah,
Love it.
And
Love it,
masculinity
guys.
for you, Dean?
Oh yeah. So masculinity was something that I, like you, Rowan, I detested a little bit for a time, especially in my earlier days. I came to, again, lots of the inner work. I came to actually really embrace my masculinity at a certain point, but it was always in more of kind of balance with my femininity, because earlier on I actually prized my feminine traits way more than the masculine ones. I kind of hated my masculine traits because I thought it was just like arrogance and stubbornness and power hunger and all these things that I just wanted to repress. I was like, oh no, I don't want it. But then I kind of I found that all of these traits, they actually had a very light positive side to them. You know, like boundaries and like assertiveness. And I'm not saying these are just masculine qualities, but perhaps what I associated for myself. Um, but I kind of feel like gender. I like how I love how there's this kind of gender fluidity mindset now for a lot of people,
yeah,
because I feel like gender, sure, we have, we have bodies which are a certain gender, but I feel like there's gender energies again. Sorry to bring it back to the hippie stuff, but I feel like you can.
Genergies.
Energies, yeah. I feel like you can switch between these dynamics quite fluidly. Just like you can switch between being an adult and a child from one moment to
Yeah,
another. And I find myself, I do so much of this stuff with my lovely wife Ursula at home, because we're both like children together a lot of the time. We love to play and just lark around and have fun. And equally, we'll both deviate between these kind of masculine, feminine roles where sometimes I'll be almost kind of mothering. I'll be very nurturing in the way I approach. Other times I'll be a right old blokey, blokey, bloke, bloke.
you actually sound like that.
Yeah, bloke, bloke. It's probably probably more occasional, to be honest. I think I do default to slightly more feminine unless I'm in sort of male company. But yeah, I like the fact that we can be everything. Why the hell should we have to be these very narrow, like scripted versions of people? Why can't we be everything?
And
I think again early on, it's another box that doesn't get ticked, which makes you
Yeah,
different, which makes you feel
yeah,
like you don't want to be here anymore. And again, in later life, it's a box that doesn't need to be ticked. The box gets thrown away. Just happy
yeah,
with who you are.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely.
it's just a shame that, you know, me working in so many different jobs over the last 10, 15 years, when especially in sales, I remember that, and that was a toxic environment to be in, where men, we do the sales, and and women do this, and we're the ones that are, we know you, we're the snakes and you're the grass and all that sort of stuff. Didn't like that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I didn't like that sort of mantra of, you know, you have to conform. And I think the three of us in general, we don't conform. I don't think. But well, we do. We have to, of course, you know, for other things. But we, I would like to say we buck the trend.
mm,
And
Mm.
and I think for me looking at you, Dean, because I'm able to look at you in the visual in the vlogcast. But I think just as a side note, really, that I've picked up on the podcast tonight, I think your voice would be absolutely fantastic for the sleep apps. Because like you've said, you've got a nurturing voice and a nurturing part of you that I think would be fantastic for the sleep pod, the sleep apps that you get. Hello, it's time to go to bed now. But honestly, I just think and it resonates, and that's where I think as we can go back to your energy, you're very calming. You're very inviting. You're very open. But of course, you can close off if you need to, and I think that comes with experience, that comes with training, that comes with life lessons. And here comes my amazing last question, that Rowan likes to plagiarize.
This is the one. This is the one.
Should I make it really dramatic? Are you a fan of Doctor Who, Dean, at all by any chance?
Oh, I used to be.
Yes, you are.
It's been a while.
But basically, you're in your time machine and you've set course back to your childhood, and you arrive and you see yourself. You're in year 7, let's just say, for example, because that was when you were experiencing it heavily with the bullying and with what you were going through. What would you tell yourself? What would you say to your younger self, basically? I've just gone round a whole tangent. What would you say to your younger self? There you go. There's my question. I tried to make it dramatic, but it failed. Go.
It's a lovely question. It's a tricky one for me, in all honesty, because I kind of have regular dialogues with my younger self. So thinking of the one thing I'd say, I guess, I want to communicate something about the fact that everything, and I feel like, I'd want to say this to anybody who's been through any degree of shit in their lives, excuse the French, is that the things that you're ashamed of in yourself are the things that separate you from other people, from trends, from what is deemed to be acceptable in this kind of mainstream narrative. These are often the things which later in life turn out to be your greatest gifts.
Yeah.
Your sensitivity, your your uniqueness, these things, these traits are beautiful. They are absolutely beautiful. And I think that our darkest shadows can give way to our brightest light, absolutely. And I think if we can really find the courage to face some of these shadows, then I truly believe that everybody has the potential to be something absolutely extraordinary.
Rowan, where did you find this kid? He's got skills.
Where
did you find him?
I'm in love.
Yeah. Wow. That was beautiful. It really, no, honestly, it really, really was.
It captures the entire ethos of everything that we believe in. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you guys. It's been such a privilege. I've loved it. If you ever want to invite me back, I'd be delighted.
No, I think I've frozen.
I can see you're laughing. You're all good. Now you're there, and he's back in the room. I got it all.
Did I freeze?
Was that an actual freeze? I thought that was a convenient freeze, so you didn't have to invite me back.
No, I think my iPad got overwhelmed. It's crying. It's okay, iPad. It's okay.
It's seeping gigs. It's seeping gigs. There you go.
Lovely. Lovely stuff.
I think it just has to be said that there should be more Deans in the world, really, because ultimately it's the sensitive nature that I think that people warm to, and it's just sad, isn't it, that as younger people we're all screaming at the world, and people still do. It's just taking that inner self to realize, just take 5 and just calm, and it comes with the territory of growing up. Our brains are lovely and pink and mushy, and we're taking everything in as we get older, but we turn grayer on the inside, and we just have to embrace that, and maturity comes whenever it needs to, but don't grow up. That's what I always say. And I think we're all examples of that. Just don't grow up. But no, brilliant, Dean.
Never lose it. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for tonight. Brilliant.
Good opportunity for me to just lean to one side and show off my new artwork, which my
Dean can't see
it. I can't see it. Oh.
Dean, you'll see it soon. This is from The Little Prince. So that's all about not growing up. It's lovely. I'll credit the artist in the episode description. But I also think that you should do.
It's unhinged. It's gonna fall.
There we go. I also think you should do the the sleep apps,
Yeah.
but in the blokey voice. I
What?
think that would. Yeah.
What?
Go sleep. Go sleep. I think that would work. But thank you very much for coming on. Hopefully we haven't missed out on anything. And I'll tell you a story, actually. Once we've stopped recording, I'll tell you a story about one of Dean's hypnosis recordings.
Tell us in a minute. No, that'll be.
Yeah.
But Dean, how do people get in touch with you if after listening to this podcast or seeing it on YouTube? How are they able to get in touch with Mr. Gaylard? How are they able to get in touch with you?
Sure. Easiest place is probably the counselling directory. I'm on there. I'm on the. I literally can't remember what it's called. I think it's a holistic directory as well. I'm not very good at this stuff.
I'll Google these and then I'll put the links in the episode description. Any
That
trace
would
of
be
you on
much
the
appreciated.
internet, I'll
Thank
put
you.
that link on there.
Brilliant.
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely superb.
And your music as well. If you've got a link to your music, because you're in a
Oh,
band.
sure. Yeah, if you want some heavy, gnarly rock in your life, why not? Yeah.
Are we
cool.
happy to play some? Actually, I'd be more than happy to play some.
Well,
And then
just as
edit
a
it in.
side note, I did make an album of sort of more meditative, contemplative instrumental music. If anyone's more interested in that, but yeah, if you want a dose of some balls to the wall kind of brutality, then yeah, check that out as well.
That's a quote.
Nice.
Balls to the wall. Amazing. I love
On that note,
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
thank you very much.
Cheers, Dean.
No, thank you, Dean. I can't remember how the episode ended. I'm recording this outro 2 days after. I'm assuming that Dean ended by saying thank you. But genuinely, thank you to Dean for coming on to our podcast and agreeing to speak so candidly and so knowledgeably as well. It's really refreshing when somebody can really stand atop that mountain and speak about what they believe in, and you can almost tell how much it feels to Dean, and you can sense his passion hopefully coming through on the podcast and or vodcast. Unfortunately, he couldn't see our faces, so he couldn't see the awe and wonder whilst we were speaking, but he can now watch the video and see every little nuance and every little eye twitch. But yeah, we loved having Dean on, and we loved talking to him, and a lot of what he said resonated with us as well. But hopefully we allowed him enough time and space to tell his story and to put his points of view across. So, as mentioned in the podcast, he's a counsellor, a Reiki master, a hypnotist, and just a nice guy to speak to and to be in a room with. And if that's via Zoom at the moment, then so be it. But Dean is heavily recommended, and I'll put a link to his counselling directory profile on the episode description. So that's a website where you can seek out a counsellor. But no need if you have Dean's link. Just go straight for him. And also his music. I'll put some links to some of his songs on the episode description as well through the Bandcamp website. Thank you for Papyrus UK. Papyrus_UK with an @ sign before. That's a clumsy way of saying it. At Papyrus_UK for everything that they do and for producing a lovely purple t-shirt which I was wearing in the episode. So you'll see that on the vodcast. If it's the podcast you're listening to, I've just described it, it's lovely in purple, so hopefully you've got that in your mind's eye. But also thank you, and this is, you're really missing out if you're just on the podcast, but go on to my Instagram at Rowan Long Counselling or at Feel No Shame Pod, and you'll see Amy Pierce's artwork, which is behind my big head. But I do pick it up at one point and then clumsily try and put it back. But on my Rowan Long Counselling, at Rowan Long Counselling, I'm forgetting the app, on that Instagram account there is a better photograph of it. It's inspired by The Little Prince, and it says, "It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye," which I very much believe in, and I thank you, Amy, for producing this lovely canvas, this lovely artwork for me. She's heavily recommended. She's a very talented artist, as is Therapoet. As always, we thank him for letting us use his poetry for our Dark Interludes. And there are a few books mentioned rather than list them all here, I'll put them on the episode description. And the music, as always, is by Adobe. And I've been Rowan, joined by Alan A.B., and joined today by Dean Gaylard. Join us next time for more, hopefully, shame-reducing chat. The next podcast will be about how to ideally respond to suicidal thoughts and feelings. And I'm sure we'll go into how not to respond as well. I've definitely got some stories I could tell. And I know our guest has as well, and I'm sure Alan can chip in with his own too. But join us next time. That'll be next week. And until then, feel no shame and enjoy listening to the podcast. And thank you to Simon Martindale as always.